Hey, what up? It's Chris Roscoe. I'm super stoked to bring this particular episode to you because I'm doing a new thing where I'm answering questions that I want to answer because I'm going to talk about the things that I just think about. And so today, the question I have is, how can you tell if you're ahead of your time or if you're just an asshole? And the reason I'm asking this question is because of a quote from Stephen Hawking that says, the thing about smart people is that they seem like crazy people to dumb people. Written from, one of the smartest guys in the history of guys, it seems like, that must be true, and like he would have some experience in that. But the other side of it is this thing called the Dunning Kruger effect, which I'm going to read right now. It's the Dunning Kruger effect, if you haven't heard about it, is this idea that the people who are least competent in a thing seem to exhibit the highest level of confidence in the thing. And the people that are the most competent at a thing can tend to show lower confidence than their counterparts that are really bad at the thing but think they're good at it. So the problem with this is that this quote from Stephen Hawking is going to have a lot of incompetent people think that they're more competent than they are, and then when other people don't understand them or get angry at them for saying shit incorrectly, they can easily lean back on this thing and say, oh, I'm just too smart for you, or like, you don't get it, you can't understand my highly sophisticated approach to life because I'm so much smarter than you. And it's a really good way to write off criticism. It's a really good way to just build a narcissistic personality and just do a whole lot of weird shit without ever having to check yourself. And so I'm essentially a professional loudmouth. I get into arguments fairly often with people, and I ask myself all the time, because people tend to get angry, because not only do I have controversial opinions, but I can also be kind of trolly, and I tend to be, I tend to think about things potentially too much. And so I'm always, whenever a conversation doesn't go well for me, I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, was I genuinely saying information that this person was having to desperately refute in order to cling to their worldview? Or was this person fully capable of understanding everything I had to say? I just communicated it really poorly. And so for me, that's honestly like a big struggle, because I care about people and I want to be there for people, and I want to communicate certain ideas to people. And then when something devolves into a fight or an argument, I feel like it's a personal failure because I want to educate the world and I want to help people see things in a new way. And so the whole cop-out that, like, oh, I'm so smart and everyone else thinks I'm crazy because they're stupid, like, that's just, it's not good enough. But it is a reality. I had a thread about this on Facebook the other day about, like, if you're so smart, then why can't you think of a way to communicate that people understand? And it opened up a pretty interesting discussion about this. And it is a thing, like people with IQs of like 80 and below, they're just simply not going to have the cognitive ability to grapple with and fully understand complex and sophisticated ideas, especially sophisticated ideas that may call their worldview into question. Like, some people just aren't equipped to do that. But the interesting thing about that is that somebody with an IQ of lower than 80 is you're probably not going to get into a philosophical debate or a political or spiritual debate with in the first place. You're probably just going to know, because 80 IQ and below is, I've never measured, but based on what they say, it seems like it'd be pretty noticeable. Like, you'd be able to read the room and know who the fuck you're talking to, and know that maybe going deep into philosophy is not necessarily the best use of either of your times. So if you get into an argument, how do you know if you're ahead of your time or if you're just an asshole? This is something I grapple with all the time because I've been an asshole. I've been ahead of my time. I've done both these things. And so it's difficult to figure out which one's which. Luckily, smart people, or stupid people, not stupid people, unintelligent people tend to not really question themselves. So, just like bad people don't question themselves. Like, if you've ever had the thought, like, oh my God, am I a good person? Like, you're probably better than you think, because bad people don't ask that question. And just like if you're having like, wow, am I stupid or am I just too smart for everybody? If you're even asking that question, you're showing a level of self-awareness and self-reflection that like a truly quote unquote stupid person would probably never demonstrate. So you're probably doing better than you think you can. But there's this weird thing that happens where there's an intersection between being right and being an asshole. You could be both at the same time. And so I haven't necessarily mapped out how to get to the quick of it, like immediately. But the thing I notice is I pay attention to my intention. And this is where I have to be really honest with myself. Where it's like I have to really pay attention to what I'm doing as I'm in the conversation or the argument or whatever. It's like, did I ignore crucial information? Did I stray from the facts of the argument? Did I make a personal attack when I felt like I couldn't back my shit up? And it really comes down to like, how on point are you? Because if you're trying to, this may not be something anybody other than myself does, but I don't know the proper grammatical structure. Maybe no one other than me does this. I'll get into an argument and I'll try to figure out whether or not I was an asshole based on what the other person tells me. Where like if they said I did something that was kind of like a jerk move, I grapple with what they said and try to see if it overlays on my internal experience. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's just kind of like continuing the argument I had with the other person, but only inside my head. And so a lot of the times it's fruitless. So what I prefer to do instead is to just look at my own motivations, look at my own behavior, look at my own intentions, look how I handled my end of the conversation. Like, did I speak clearly? Did I say anything inflammatory? Because once you say inflammatory shit, which is easy to do, you know, I'm used to being a sarcastic dick. Like, that's what I was for most of my life. Like, I'm a nice guy. I take care of my friends. Like, I listen. I'm there for people. I'm a coach and all that. But my sense of humor I got from my dad. And my dad had this type of sense of humor where he just kind of like make fun of you. And he loved you. And I inherited it. And I think it's hilarious. And my friends think it's hilarious. But sometimes it comes out in ways that I wouldn't necessarily prefer. So when there's this intersection between being right and being an asshole, where you can be both at the same time, it's really important to look at, did I use any inflammatory words? Did I say anything that was obviously going to upset the person that I'm talking about? Or did I deal with the topics and the facts being debated straightforwardly, honestly, and without getting my emotions involved? And if you can say yes to all those things, and the person still got mad, then it's very likely, at least in my own reasoning and understanding, that you're probably okay. You know, like if you communicated well, then you're probably doing okay. But if, let's say, you're in a bad mood or whatever, and suddenly your arguments, like throwing in all these personal digs and all these things that are essentially designed to kind of like upset somebody, then not only is your message going to get lost, but you kind of lose the ability to say like, oh, they're just too dumb to understand my argument. It's like, no, you were kind of an asshole. And so who's going to understand anybody when they're being an asshole? Because there's something interesting that happens there is, I should have researched this before I did this, but anyways, you can just experience this in your own reality. I'm pretty sure this happens to everybody. There's this almost autonomic effect that happens, when, like, let's say somebody comes at you and because they want you to change your behavior. Like, I had somebody do this to me recently. They thought that I was doing a behavior that I could improve. And so they came to me and they started judging me and like calling me all kinds of shit and telling me about my own worldview. They were way off, but they were just coming at me like, you think this way and you do these things and blah, 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 blah. And like, she was actually right about some of it, but because of the way she came at me, I was like, oh fuck, like what, like you don't know me, what are you talking about, why are you saying all this, like where the fuck is this coming from, like I don't understand. And so that may or may not have happened to you, but I'm sure anytime anybody comes at you with like shame and aggression, like even if you have, you know, transmuted or whatever in order to the point where you can just sit there and be cool with it, the tendency is to go into defense and to like strike out and all that, and just basically not be all that cooperative in the communication process. So your impact on other people is dependent on, your attitude towards them. And so if you come at them acting like an asshole, then communication was broken down in the first place, and you can bet that it's really not your fault. Or you can bet that, it probably is at least partially your fault. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that the only way to know for sure in any given situation about whether or not someone was upset because the information that you relayed was just too much for them versus whether or not you were an asshole. And maybe no one else cares about this. Maybe I'm the only one. But the way to tell, from what I can tell at this point, is just to study yourself. Because only you can know how you really came across. Because there's this thing that happens in arguments nowadays. It probably has always happened. But people want to tell you why you said what you said, Why you said what you said? Yeah, there we go. People want to tell you why you said what you said. And they want to assume like they're in your head. And they want to assume like they know what the fuck you're talking about and where you were coming from and your motivations and all that shit. And it can be very difficult to refute that because people, they just kind of stick with it. And so the only thing you can really do is know where you came from, or where you're coming from, being open to being wrong. Because as soon as you like fucking dig your heels in and say like, no, this is the way it is, then like, well, you miss a piece of nuance and suddenly you look like an asshole because nobody's entirely right and nobody's entirely wrong unless you're talking about like simple mathematics. But as far as like philosophy and religion and even politics, like nobody's 100% right and nobody's 100% wrong. So if you are holding a stance really firmly, then like it's better to have a little bit of humility, because let's say you are like 80% right and the person's only 20% right. If you show humility first, they'll give ground on their 20% way easier, and then you actually reach common ground and find understanding. So if the question of am I ahead of my time or am I just an asshole, if that causes you any kind of existential terror like it does for me, rest assured that asking that question alone means you're probably doing better than you think you are. The way out of it is self-reflection. And if you're actually open and willing to do that self-reflection, you're probably doing way better than you fucking think you are, unless that self-reflection shows that, you're kind of a dick when it comes to communication, which is very likely the case. I just had this huge rude awakening about how I communicated. Like I had to totally reevaluate a lot of it. It was really fucking bizarre, and it came out of nowhere, which I may have been the victim of this like Dunning Kruger thing where I would complain about people being bad at communication, and then like somebody revealed to me that I was being really bad at communication. It's like, well, I got to think some shit through. So if you're doing that, just rest assured that you're probably on the right side, even though you're going to sway every now and then. You're going to lose your cool. You're going to get out of integrity. You're going to try to save face. Your pride's going to get in the way. Like, you're a human. Things are going to happen. It's totally fine. But you can stay on the up and up, and you can keep your confidence, and you can keep your sense of self, and you can keep your I don't know what you call that. Your connection to truth. You can keep your connection to truth as long as you're willing to be open-minded, really pay attention to where you're coming from, and not necessarily worry about the other shit or the shit the other person's saying. Except for the arguments. Like, you obviously want to pay attention to the arguments, but yeah, I think that's good. Hopefully you give a shit about this. Hopefully this helps somebody other than me, because talking through it seemed to do me some good. So I hope it did you some good. Again, I'm Chris Orozco. This is Operation Moksha. I'm going to have to find some better way to sign off with these things. But until then, I love you, and I'll see you next time.